everybody, it's Hope from Osos Valley Nursery. I hope you're all staying fire safe and COVID safe. So this week we've had a lot of questions about watering. So I wanted to go over a few tips and tricks about watering and let people know maybe how they can better help themselves with watering. So we're going to go over first in containers on how to water, and then we'll go over the in the ground watering. So when watering in containers, and whether it be terracotta, ceramic, clay, or plastic, so you have to give a little thought that your ceramic and your plastic are going to dry out slower, and that the clay, cement pots, and clay pots, Mexican clay, Italian clay, are going to dry out faster. And so even sometimes adding cornstarch to those can be a good thing, because then they'll stay wetter longer. But in general, just in the watering sense, we don't want to water the plant itself. A lot of people spray the plant down. You really just want to saturate the roots themselves. So I think of it as if I took a shower every day, it feels good, it looks good, but I'm not actually hydrating my body. So you need to drink water. You would want to thoroughly water. When watering, I don't like the water wands. I call them death wands, because they force air out during the process of putting out water, and they have, it looks neat, shower, like it's rain shower, all these different things. But you really want the water to come out and thoroughly saturate the plant as quickly as possible. And you want to have a 1 to 2 inch lip in your pot so that you can fill that up and allow it to drain through. And so when I turn on water and I'm watering our landscape, I want something that isn't just going to blast the soil out of the pot, and you can go, like I could probably even go a little higher here, but I thoroughly want to water the plant and get all sides wet, and I'll give it a minute to thoroughly saturate. And what happens when you do this too, your roots are all thoroughly saturated, all the soil's moist, and so then the plant can actually go longer in between. When you're only watering and you're just watering for a little bit, not all of those roots get wet. So a lot of times some of the roots on the side don't get wet. Some of the roots on the bottom might not be wet. You have a little half here, half there. And that the plant will then start to search for water. So one side of the plant may be searching while the other one's wet, and that allows your plant to get root bound a lot faster. And so then it becomes harder later on to water the plants, and they never look quite as good. So when you're watering, and this is my favorite tool, I would get this above a water wand any day. And these are the FlexStrike is my favorite brand, but you can use any brand of moisture meter. And so then you would water your plants thoroughly. You would go in and check in 3 different spots at least on that plant and make sure, that the plant is thoroughly watered on all sides. And then clean it and put it away. But when you start to do this, and you start to use these, you'll start to notice a pattern of, okay, now I know what it looks like when I've thoroughly watered my plant. Now this plant can go 5 to 6 days without watering. It all depends. People say, well, how often should I water that plant? Depends on the heat of the day, so indoor, outdoor, shade, sun. Depends on the pot. It depends on the size of the pot. Is it a smaller plant in a bigger pot? Is it a bigger plant in a smaller pot? And the soil. And so is it really good potting soil? Is it okay potting soil? So there's never a good answer to that question, but thoroughly watering your plant is going to make it grow better. It's going to make it live longer, and be more disease resistant. When a plant is thoroughly hydrated, it's just like we are. They actually grow better and do better. The reasons that you wouldn't want to water the leaves is because that helps insects and fungus reproduce. And so thoroughly watering your plant is easy. Okay, well now we're going to go on and talk about watering your plants in the ground and how to make that work better for you. So if you live in the Los Osos area, we have very sandy soil. It's sugar fine. It locks out oxygen, locks out water. It's the water molecules are actually larger than the sand particles, so that's why it doesn't go down. That's why it rolls off. We don't have oil in our soil. We just don't have good soil. So adding good amendments, and when you add good amendments, you want to make a king size bed. So even in Los Osos, I like to add even double the amount that you would normally. Like normally the rule of thumb is double the root ball size. But out here you really need to triple and quadruple the size hole that you have to have a plant do really well and to have it do well for a long time. So I like to think of it as a king size bed for a little infant. And so you want to place that baby in a king size bed as opposed to a crib size bed, because that's what it's going to get. It's harder to go back and add soil than it is to continually or take away. And so adding good soil, and then the moisture meter, this is where these come into play wonderfully. So we don't have the evaporation in normal weather that you need to be watering every day or every other day. Even a lot of people like to water 5 minutes a day and thinking that will make the plant grow. But a lot of the plants that we carry and that you find today in any store are going to be drought tolerant plants, and they don't like that everyday water. So really getting the plant to where it's using the water efficiently, and that's getting the roots down into the ground. So you want to water longer to where that water's going down and the roots are going to chase it down, and less often. So that water down on the very bottom of the hole, when it's 2 and 3 feet down, isn't going to evaporate right off the top. So really going out and checking. What I like to do, if you're hand watering, you really want to thoroughly water it, even soak it, and then measure, check the area to see that it's wet. And I've had areas that took me a whole day to get wet after the plant was in there for 5 years, because it was only getting little bits of top water, and it took a long time to get that water down into the ground. You also have the wicking away factor. If you have a new planting area and you just water those plants that you're putting in, the water that's dry on the outside, it's like having a sponge out there. It's going to wick the water away faster. So getting the whole area wet is going to help those plants reach out and stay wetter longer than if you hadn't. You're always going to be chasing, trying to get that soil wet and get it watered. So really thoroughly watering those plants that you have until they're thoroughly wet, and then checking to see how long it takes. I usually like to go out on a new planting and I'll water everything thoroughly, and then I go out every 3 days and I check with the moisture meter and I see how long it takes to get back down to like a 4 or 5, and then that's what I set my drip system to. And then making sure that you have a drip system that has more than one emitter on the plant. Our sand goes straight down, and so if you just have one emitter, one side of the plant gets wet and the other side is dry. So you always want to have at least 2 emitters, and then you can always use cornstarch to help keep plants moister. Planting with cornstarch is a great thing because it actually helps the plant stay wetter longer. But really thoroughly watering your plants and making sure that they are wet, and that they're wet 8 inches down and not just up on top. And that's where your food's going to end up going, is down, and that's where we want to have the roots chase.